Bendy and Five Nights at Freddy's are the most iconic and well-known franchises in the indie horror scene. Five Nights at Freddy's is recognized as a foundational piece to the genre's success, while Bendy was a franchise that built on and expanded the scene. Both franchises have generated millions in revenue, whether it be the games, books, or merch. They both have the most recognizable faces a franchise could ask for in Freddy Fazbear and Bendy. But recently, I played Bendy in the Dark Revival on stream and had a great time with the game. But after the credits rolled, I thought, what about Bendy in the Dark Revival would fit into Five Nights at Freddy's? I'm always thinking up new ideas that FNAF could implement to improve the franchise, so after playing this game, I wondered what a FNAF fan like myself would want to see in a future FNAF game that Bendy executed well. So that's what we're doing in today's video. Bendy and FNAF fans, I choose you. But before I start my super in-depth analysis, I want to point out that I am comparing the Security Breach game and its DLC Ruin to Bendy in the Dark Revival. I feel those two entities have more in common and make sense to compare and contrast against each other rather than the Help Wanted games, which are entirely in VR. So let's get started with everyone's favorite, gameplay. One of the things about Bendy that jumped through my screen while I was playing this game was the emphasis on ambiance. From the moment Audrey was in the ink machine, I felt the weight of my environment. I was on edge for much of the game, wondering where my next threat or opponent would be. Comparing this to Security Breach, there's a stark difference. In Security Breach, I felt safe, and not much made me feel scared or threatened. However, new evidence has come to light from a recent interview from J-Top, a lead at Steelwool Studios and FNAF.
We want to see it during the functional phase, when people would love to go there. It's
Right.
If that was a real place, I want to go there.
Security Breach not having a scary ambiance was by design. You're supposed to feel like someone intruding in a place you shouldn't be. Also, I want to highlight the DLC Ruin for fixing all these problems. Ruin is the opposite of Security Breach, where you always feel stressed and looking out for who's gonna get you, which aligns better with the experience in Bendy in the Dark Revival. Additionally, if we're honest, it's much more difficult to sell an 80s rock pizzaplex as scary when fully running and operational compared to when it's been closed down for an unknown period of time. So regarding ambiance, noise, sound design, all that stuff, I feel FNAF is pretty secure and confident moving forward. But my next point concerning Bendy is something FNAF needs desperately. While playing Bendy, I noticed a tiny logo marking where I needed to go as I progressed through the inky world. This little logo is something Security Breach needed desperately. Many times while I was playing this game, I was lost, and I had no idea where the game wanted me to go. In some games, being lost will have you stumble across side missions or quests that fill your time. But in Security Breach, I was just lost, with no idea where to go. If I had a tiny little indicator on the watch's map or on different doorways and paths I needed to follow, the game would have been an entirely different experience. Instead of getting frustrated at the game for telling me to go places I didn't know about, it would have been nice for a little Freddy outline to show me where to go. But to ensure no one is above criticism, there were moments in the Dark Revival where the icon was non-existent. Like Security Breach, I would be lost with no idea where to go, and the icon was nowhere in sight. Interestingly, Ruin didn't have this issue because it was much more straightforward and the game heavily guided the player's path. So a guiding icon would be a nice addition if Steelwool or another studio makes a FNAF game similar in size to Security Breach, or perhaps a larger Fall Fest themed location. Moving on to something more exciting, let's talk boss battles. Bendy in the Dark Revival had two boss battles that I want to compare and contrast against two boss battles from Security Breach. I'm referring to the battles against Alice Angel and Wilson's Ship-Ahoy Dudley from Bendy. From Security Breach, I'm going to be using Monty and Burntrap. The battles from Bendy that I mentioned are ones that I enjoyed and would play again 100%. Alice's battle requires the player to use abilities and knowledge from previous encounters in the game and was executed well. The big boss battle against Ship-Ahoy Dudley was another battle that I loved. I don't know how to describe it perfectly, but I almost got a Mario boss battle vibe from this. Essentially, you were tricking the boss into making it easier to kill them. Ship-Ahoy Dudley was a cool looking monster, and failing this battle didn't feel like something you couldn't recover from. Side tangent here, but some games out there have boss battles where failures feel like the end of the world. When you die, you subconsciously weigh the pros and cons of just dropping your controller or keyboard and quitting the game. In my humble opinion, a good boss battle makes the player feel like dying has consequences, but the player feels like they can recover and get right back into the fight. Bendy in the Dark Revival does that really well with their boss battles. But changing focus to Security Breach, the Monty boss battle is one of my favorites within the game. I think it's a super smart move to use the arcade game style in a battle. Shooting plastic balls into a giant bucket while getting chased by a robot gator is just what you would expect to see in Security Breach. It makes sense within this game, and I want to state that while the battle does have its problems, it's fine for Security Breach. The other battle against Burntrap is quite the opposite. The boss battle is extremely boring boring, and most players are just recovering from the revelation that Afton is still alive and that this franchise won't move on. To apply the Bendy boss battle method to Burntrap, a fight against the Tangle similar to Ship Ahoy Dudley would have been cool, or perhaps like Alice Angel. Gregory would have to sneak around and catch Burntrap off guard. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion on improving this fight, but I will pull from Bendy for this video. The next characteristic of Bendy I want to compare to Security Breach and Ruin is combat and weapons. Within the Dark Revival, Audrey uses the gent pipe as her main form of beating opponents. See a lost one? Just smack them over the head till they die. Meanwhile, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach uses weapons to delay the inevitable. Examples are the Phaser Blaster and Phas Camera, which can stun certain animatronics and buy players time to escape. The Phas Camera and gent pipe also share a feature of unlocking areas by using them. The critical difference is that the gent pipe is required to progress through Bendy in the Dark Revival, while in Security Breach, the Phas Camera is more of an accommodation to find cool Easter eggs. But in Security Breach's DLC Ruin, we use the Phas Wrench. This little device gives players a puzzle to solve when opening doors and is a way of rebooting the Pizzaplex's animatronics. While I could try to ask Steel Wool to combine the attack capabilities of the Phas Camera with the Phas Wrench's utility, it would be pointless. FNAF and Bendy are very different franchises in how they approach combat. Five Nights at Freddy's combat is less about beating your opponent to a pulp and more about distracting them so you can run away. Bendy's combat focuses on whacking your opponent to death and dodging their attacks. Also, we need to cover another difference between FNAF and Bendy, the health bar. Bendy in the Dark Revival has a health system that players can upgrade as they play through the game, but Security Breach and Ruin don't have that, and it's for a good reason. Within Five Nights at Freddy's, death needs to feel like it has consequences. It would feel unnatural for Glamrock Chica to jump scare Gregory and then he's just left with half a health bar. Is it impossible? No, but it would still feel unnatural compared to the past years of FNAF where failure gets you a jump scare and a game over screen. The next area I want to hop to is enemies within FNAF and Bendy. Bendy's enemies range from bosses like Ship Ahoy Dudley and Alice Angel to minor enemies like Searchers and Lost Ones. The Lost Ones, Searchers, and Ink Widows are enemies that you can beat over the head with a gent pipe and defeat. It would be cool to apply these ideas to FNAF games. It would be cool if Gregory and Cassie got to destroy mini music men or other threats, because within FNAF, we only destroy animatronics during staged encounters. Those can be cool, but it would be nice for Cassie to kill those stupid mini music men with a drop kick or smash them with a hammer. And another thing I want to highlight is the lack of enemy variation in Bendy in the Dark Revival. During my playthrough, I felt like I only encountered Lost Ones and nothing else. They're cool, don't get me wrong, but with other enemies briefly shown, it would have been cool to run into new enemies. Luckily, Security Breach and Ruin have a natural variety of enemies. There are different Glamrock animatronics, mini music robots, moon, etc. Another enemy I want to highlight is the Ink Demon, and it's because of his similarity to Mexis from Ruin. The Ink Demon in the Dark Revival forces the player to hide within a few seconds to avoid imminent death. If you don't hide, the Ink Demon teleports to wherever you are and kills you. Mexis works similarly in that its purpose is to disrupt the player. You will be chilling in the AR world, and then he will appear out of nowhere and force you to quit whatever you were doing. But I prefer the method Steel Wool used. I like the idea of Mexis not killing you instantly, but spawning a ruined animatronic to try and jump scare you. It keeps the player on their toes, but doesn't feel too punishing. While playing Dark Revival, the Ink Demon caught me off guard, and I died multiple times because I couldn't find a hiding spot. Some could say this was due to a massive skill issue, but this sudden enemy should force the player to adapt rather than an instant game over. It felt more rewarding to evade a ruined Glamrock Chica or Monty successfully than it would have been for Mexis to just jump scare me and call it a day. The next aspect of Bendy I want to go over super fast is puzzles. There's one puzzle in Bendy that I would love to see in a future FNAF game, and that's the Alice puzzle. For those who don't know, Alice Angel gives the player a riddle that forces them to solve the seating order of 4 animals: a rabbit, a bear, a bird, and a fox. Coincidentally, that matches the 4 OG animatronics from FNAF 1. To complete this puzzle, you must ask the Lost Ones about their clues on the animals and who they would prefer to sit next to. Puzzles like this are perfect for the current era of Five Nights at Freddy's and all the Glamrock animatronics that have personalities and lots of dialogue. So, what if a future FNAF game had an animatronic that emphasized learning or used riddles to answer questions? It would be nice for a change, because in Security Breach, one of the puzzles we do get is the Mazer-size puzzle. This puzzle is awful, and no one likes it. The reason is that it's way too complicated, and there's no straightforward answer. The player must keep shifting the walls multiple times until they get it at the right angle, which takes forever. So, in a future FNAF game, it would be nice to see simpler puzzles, but also play off of the characteristics of the animatronics. Maybe Roxanne Wolf lets us build the engine of a go-kart, or we can get a riddle from Sun that we have to answer. Either way, just crossing my fingers that Steel Wool continues to use the personalities and narratives around the animatronics to enhance the gameplay experience. Another way to enhance gameplay is by upgrading your abilities. In the Dark Revival, Audrey finds these ink containers allowing the player to upgrade an ability of their choice. The 3 options are stamina, health, and special ability. In Security Breach, you can also upgrade different aspects of Gregory and Glamrock Freddy. A cool way to combine both would be finding fast tokens around the Pizzaplex and letting players spend these tokens to upgrade their stamina, flashlight, or other ability of Steel Wool's choice. The original idea of finding gift boxes around the Pizzaplex isn't bad, but with so many collectibles around the Pizzaplex, a coin system could simplify this. Also, I'm assuming that the next Steel Wool game we get will be a large-scale project like Security Breach was. That game made them way too much money for them not to try and replicate that success in a future title. Now, to finish the gameplay-focused categories quickly, I will just rapid-fire through them. Game controls. Both games have good controls, and I never had any issues with them during my playthroughs. Total playtime. According to How Long to Beat, a website that averages players' playtime on games, it says that Bendy in the Dark Revival takes 7 hours to beat, while Security Breach takes 10 hours. This is a difficult category to compare because Security Breach takes a lot of time to navigate through the whole Pizzaplex, and Bendy just starts at one point and then just keeps going forward until the credits roll. So I'm gonna let you guys in the comments decide whether the games felt too long, too quick, or perfect as is. Regarding visuals and their performance, both games had issues at launch. Security Breach and Dark Revival suffered from graphics performance issues, but at least Steel Wool fixed things in their DLC Ruin, as no one experienced any major issues at launch. And, to the credit of Dark Revival, I experienced no game-altering bugs or glitches in my playthrough of the game. Now, it's time to discuss Mascot Horror fans' favorite, lore and storytelling. The first category I'm going to dissect is characters. Bendy and FNAF have extremely different approaches to introducing characters and giving them background stories and information. For example, we don't know much about Audrey at the beginning of the game, but by the end we have learned about her childhood and upbringing, giving players more insight into who they are playing as. FNAF is the exact opposite. You will play as a character and be happy about it. If you learn anything, it's through examining hints and Easter eggs hidden in the game or cross-examining the character with the books. A perfect example of this is Gregory. We know nothing about Gregory except that his name is Gregory and he's short. By the end of the game, we don't learn anything else. The only ending that insinuates anything about Gregory is the 1-star bad ending, where he is sleeping with a newspaper as a blanket in an alley. The logical conclusion that most fans came to is that Gregory is a homeless orphan. Personally, I wouldn't change anything about how characters are depicted in either franchise. Bendy will always have its way of introducing characters, and FNAF will always be vague about theirs. Bendy's developers wanted the player to experience a complete and unabridged story, and Five Nights at Freddy's will always be vague about their character details and their fates, leaving the door open for theorizing and the return of characters. It can be frustrating, but that's something embedded in the DNA of FNAF, so there's nothing either franchise can contribute to the other. But if there were something about secondary characters within FNAF that Bendy in the Dark Revival does well, I'd take it, which is a great segue to my proposed plan for improving secondary characters within FNAF. How convenient. Because FNAF has gotten bigger. Everyone has a voice actor, everyone has a personality, and everyone has something that makes them unique. So I think FNAF should use this character's individuality to shake up their experiences. An example is the number of friendly characters within the Dark Revival. People like Joey Drew, Allison Angel, Porter, and Betty are friendly or at least cordial to the player. I am aware that Steel Wool is slightly implementing this into FNAF. Examples include Glamrock Freddy, Roxanne Wolf at the end of Ruin, Sun in his own way, and even Helpy within the Vanny Mask, who seems friendly initially. I want Steel Wool to keep giving us friendly characters and exposition through their dialogue. The other elephant in the room in terms of Bendy's story compared to FNAF's is their objective. To me, Five Nights at Freddy's has always been about giving the player a small window to experience some point in Fazbear's history. Bendy contrasts heavily because they want you to experience everything like a movie. Security Breach and Ruin are experiences with little context as to why anything is happening. What is the Mimic? Who set up the Mexa system? Why is all this equipment in the Pizzaplex lobby? None of this is answered outright in the game because you see Cassie's experience from when she enters to when this happens.
No!
The next storytelling element I want to cover briefly is audio logs. These pre-recorded messages in Bendy give background information and stories for the hardcore fans to listen to. Security Breach has something similar, which are the messages Gregory can find hidden around the Pizzaplex. However, Ruin has the best version of all three. Ruin's collectibles have small descriptions of the items from Cassie's perspective. I think this is a great way to give background info and personality to a character. Through these small excerpts, we learn about Cassie's father, who isn't in the game, and fun details about other characters like Glamrock Bonnie, who's never appeared in a game fully functional. Moving on to our last and most unique trait, it's these franchises' acknowledgement of the outside world. If you're confused, let me break it down. Five Nights at Freddy's games have always occurred within the confines of a pizzeria or a pizzaplex. To clarify, I know FNAF 4 and Sister Location have portions outside the pizzeria, but they are very small and play a much smaller role. The FNAF 4 house is barely a walk away, and Sister Location is technically its own pizzeria-esque location. The Dark Revival has Audrey walking through city streets, subway stations, locations, and more. I acknowledge that Bendy is taking place in an ink machine, and these other locations are a natural part of the Bendy experience and expansion. However, it would be cool for modern FNAF to feature gameplay outside of a pizzeria, perhaps in a junkyard fighting the Afton amalgamation, investigating an abandoned warehouse, or anything Steel Wool can imagine. It would just be nice to see FNAF take the next jump. At the end of the day, the future of FNAF is in Steel Wool's hands, and I hope they don't hesitate to notice what other mascot horror franchises are doing that their fans love. Because many fans who love FNAF also love these other franchises.